Until about July. We have a short agenda this evening, but let's hope it doesn't go too long. Now I've really jinxed it. So if you would stand with me for the pledge and our invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Lord, as we start a new year, we pray for a safer Billings and ask that you protect those who protect our community. As we seek to serve our city, we pray for wisdom and understanding that manifests itself in humility and good deeds and not in selfish ambition or disorder. Bless us with wisdom that is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. Let us be peacemakers who sow in peace for the benefit of our community and fellow citizens. Amen. Tony, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Shaw? Here. Councilmember Gulick?
Here.
Neese?
Here.
Owen?
Here.
Joy?
Present.
Chiriki?
I am here.
Tidswell?
Here.
Purinton? Here. Boyette?
Here.
Rupsis?
Here.
Mayor Cole?
Here. We have our minutes of December 19th before us this evening. Council, do we have any changes or a motion? Councilmember Joy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I move we approve minutes December 19th, 2022.
Is there a second by Councilmember Tidswell? Any discussion? Councilmember Gulick?
This is such a minor little thing, but thank you. Minor little thing but on page 9, at the top, the amended motion, I believe it should say reference in that first sentence on page, that quote, on page 11, totally 99 million should be instead, quote, page 11, totaling 99 million.
Okay. Thank you for that. Can we consider that a friendly amendment by the movement and second? Yes. So if our clerk got that,
Thank you.
we'll consider that to be the motion before us for adoption. Any further discussion? Seeing not, if all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Council courtesies this evening. Do we have any council courtesies? We'll move on to proclamations then. We do have a proclamation in recognition of Billings School Choice Week. And it reads as follows. Whereas all children in Billings should have access to the highest quality education possible, and whereas Billings recognizes the important role that an effective education plays in preparing all students in Billings to be successful adults, and whereas quality education is critically important to the economic vitality of Billings, and whereas Billings is home to a multitude of high-quality public and non-public schools from which parents can choose for their children, in addition to families who educate their children in the home. And whereas educational variety does not only helps to diversify our economy, but also enhances the vibrancy of our community. And whereas Billings has many high-quality teaching professionals in all types of school settings who are committed to educating our children, and whereas School Choice Week is celebrated across the country by millions of students, parents, educators, schools, and organizations to raise awareness of the need for effective educational options. Now, therefore, I, Bill Cole, do hereby recognize January 22nd through 28, 2023 as Billings School Choice Week, and I call this observance to the attention of all of our citizens. Back on council courtesies, I see Kevin Plone in the audience, and I'm not sure if he is here for an item on the consent agenda or not, but we can't really miss this opportunity to recognize that, Kevin, this might be your last city council meeting, and that was a little bit too big of a smile and too big of a thumbs up. But Kevin has faithfully served the city of Billings since about 1933, or maybe it is 33 years or something like that, 33 years. And he deserves our appreciation. He has done a great job. So council, for our whole community, can we give Kevin just a round of applause? If you have any complaints about the airport, that's the guy, but act fast. So, very well. Council reports. Any council reports from organizations or committees that members serve on behalf of the city? Don't see any. City administrator report. Chris.
So staff advised me a new strategy. I've got several items here, hoping that if I stretch the meeting a little bit, maybe we will be done by 6 when we should be done with this agenda. Remind the council that we're not meeting next Monday, but next Tuesday in observation of Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So the meeting will be Tuesday evening. A couple of bills that came quickly to us. So Senate Bill 12, you may have seen in the Gazette. Our domestic violence prosecutor, Ben Halverson, has often been our kind of point person in the city attorney's office relative to legislative issues. So Ben testified last week in opposition. Senate Bill 12, oversimplified, was essentially going to say if we're prosecuting or holding someone accountable on exclusively city ordinance violations, the public defense should be paid for by the local government, not by the state of Montana. And though we may not firmly disagree with that concept, there's a lot of complexity to this, way beyond that. And so Ben did testify in opposition and offered that if jail time were being requested, that may be a threshold. Bottom line is there's support to collect data and get better information. For a couple of sessions in a row, the perception was Billings was costing the state of Montana's public defender's office, all kinds of dollars, a lot of money. What the state, through some of its subcommittees, speculate that may be between 4 and 5% of the work that goes on across the state of Montana is local ordinance prosecutions. Bottom line is I wanted to flag for you that we did testify. We'll continue to watch those bills, and we're working pretty closely with the Judiciary Committee because there's a number of bills, including tomorrow morning is Senate Bill 94, which I believe goes right at the heart of some of our sober living housing issues. So we're watching those closely. We're working with our team out of Crowley Fleck, Steve Turkowitz and Amy Gramales, and our staff, making sure that we're consistent with the general direction you've given us. And then that brings to the fact that I drafted the resolution for you to approve, but didn't get it on your agenda tonight. So your next council meeting, you'll have the actual resolution that the legislative subcommittee passed in early December. It was a mishap on my part. I thought it was all into the system, and it wasn't in the system for tonight's agenda. So we'll get that in front of you. Consent agenda, item 1E. There was an inadvertent north included in the title. It should not, we've never referred to it as the north bypass. And so north should be removed from that. It was mentioned earlier, Kevin Plone, 33 years of service to the city, to the community, and there will be a retirement party for him this Friday from 2 to 4:30. Citizens can come up to the airport, to the restaurant, and offer their appreciation and thank Kevin for his service to the community. No ex parte items for you. And last but certainly not least, late last week, I caught word, I still don't know the details beyond, the governor's office is hosting a roundtable public safety discussion in our community Wednesday morning, late morning. So I've got to get more information there as to the details. He held one a year ago It was in January 22 when we were in the library having a roundtable discussion. So tomorrow we need to get on top of what's that discussion look like. Chief of Police has been invited, the mayor, and it'll be at the First Interstate Operations Center. That's what I have for you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Chris? Councilmember Purington.
Thank you. So Chris, I had mentioned in an email that I sent back to you regarding these bills moving forward. My hope is that our lobbyists were to kind of give us an update of when these bills would be heard, and I know they're just getting on the calendar. But you mentioned Senate Bill 12, evidently that was on tap even last week. And so, you know, I think it's good. We established this legislative committee to look at these things, and yet this would directly impact Billings. So I think it's good if we have those pros and cons for why we would or would not support those bills. Danny made some valid points. They may not apply directly to what we're experiencing with municipal costs to the state, but I just think it would be good if you had this information in time to send Ben up to Helena. I don't know if he went or if it was Zoom. So there obviously was some notice of that. So, I mean, I, for one, would appreciate, you know, whenever we have a staffer that is speaking to or against a bill that's before even the committees at this point. I know a lot of times they go through a lot of reiteration. The other point that I just wanted to make was on this public safety forum with the governor. I remember last time it was kind of a hurry up and wait. And I think he only wanted certain people there. So I'm not sure. I mean, it would be nice to know if council members could go, elected officials could go. I think that would be good. I know the mayor is invited, which is good. But I think if he had more than just one voice, it would also, maybe the governor would listen too. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
So the second point, we'll get verification because I don't know myself either. I did not have an invitation. We'll confirm who is invited and share that with you guys so you have it. To the first point, I think from a practical standpoint, yes, it shouldn't be a problem at all pushing out to you when we have folks testifying. Ben was well prepared. We had a Zoom prep call. I hope, though, what the expectation is not that we're going to provide you with written prep work that we supply you when we're testifying, provided our testifying has to be consistent with what the policies of this body and this organization are. So I guess a little bit of clarity as to what you're expecting so we meet those expectations of what you want me or anybody in the organization who's testifying to give you before they actually do testify, or to the committee. The committee is a great resource as they've looked through everything that we're supporting so far.
Okay, I think it justifies a little conversation on that, if that's okay. So we'll dive into that. I saw Councilmember Trickey and Councilmember Shaw's hands. I'm just going to insert, one thing we're going to have to do is create a watch list, because there's 4,400 bill requests. And so who knows, we're going to have to narrow that down to what is even worth focusing on. So, but Councilmember Trickey, Councilmember Shaw?
Yeah, that was exactly the point that I was going to make. I really don't want staff spending time preparing presentations for us so that we can see it before they actually show up there. I'm fine with them, just going up and doing it. What I do want to know is what are the bills our lobbyists are tracking, and what is the position that we're asking our lobbyists to take on it. And then that allows me to look at it. And thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Shaw.
Danny nailed it. I'll just reiterate, I do not expect or want staff to spend time writing up reports for council in any way, but just notification to the committee of this bill, this person's testifying, I think is plenty far enough.
Councilor Denise.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to agree with both Danny and Kendra on this. As the chair, I think the legislative committee should know when staff are going up there to testify. Again, we don't want a written report, but I think it would be helpful to know the position, so that if the position or the summary of what they're talking about is something the legislative committee may look at and have a quick meeting about, say, wait, no, or yes, hey, maybe we need to rally around this and move forward and support that. So that would be helpful to have well in advance of before they're testifying, as soon as possible as you can. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on that before we, does that provide you?
Thank you, Mayor.
Danielle,
Thank you,
or-
Council. There is a draft list of the several hundred bills that we are tracking because they deal with local government. And so as we get weeks into this, we'll get that refined and get that working more smoothly. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, we'll move on then to public comment on non-public hearing items, which tonight is everything on our agenda. Anything on item 1, our consent agenda and all the subparts, and item 2, proposed zone change. If you're here for anything on our agenda, now is the time. Please come forward. Just ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes and tell us your name and address up front. Is there any public comment on items 1 or 2?
Hi, Mayor and Council. As many of you know, my name is Elise Monat, and I'm the Active Transportation Planner with our City County Planning Office. And I'm just here today to talk about item 1G and thank Big Sky Economic Development for their donation to the Mobilize the Magic City project. I know we've spoken to you about the Mobilize the Magic City project before, but just as a reminder, it's funded partly by a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts. And we're going to work with an artist in residence to involve art and artists in everyday civic life. And the project really focuses on creative placemaking, which the National Endowment for the Arts says integrates arts, culture, and design activities into efforts that strengthen communities. And it requires partnerships across sectors and deeply engages the community to lay groundwork for systems change. So while we were awarded $50,000 through this grant, we do need some local funds to unlock the NEA's grant funds, so to speak. And we thought that BSED was a natural fit because they already do a lot of creative placemaking work in the community. So we reached out to them and they were kind enough to provide a donation. And they were our first donor, so they really helped us kick off the project. So I'm really grateful for that. And I know that there's a couple of more donations coming down the pipeline that we might bring to you later. But right now, Diane Lem is also here to kind of talk a little bit about BSED's creative placemaking.
Thank you very much. Lisa, while we have you, if somebody is interested in contributing, how do they do that?
You can get in touch with me and you can write a check to the City of Billings and I can help you process that. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Diane.
Thank you. Good evening. Big Sky Economic Development is really pleased to join our partners in supporting the Mobilizing the Magic City initiative. We're really excited to see the city embrace the development of placemaking hubs, create a placemaking playbook, and establish a public arts committee. Mobilizing the Magic City aligns so well with community development's focus on redevelopment, revitalization, and placemaking. Our strategic placemaking focus includes quality of place developments, like our Space to Place program, a micro placemaking grant program for our local communities, supporting a new vision for funding and development of regional parks and trails and local placemaking initiatives. Big Sky Economic Development's Space to Place creative placemaking micro grant competition is going to open for applications soon. Community groups, individuals, and youth are all encouraged to submit ideas for turning a local space into a vibrant place. Big Sky Economic Development social media pages will post the link to the online application. That will be opening here on the 19th, I believe. Or for more information, you can contact Tom McLean. And we'll be happy to kind of walk you through that process for anyone that is new to this application, wants to dive into this. We're more than happy to help them with that. Community development is really more important than ever. Today, over 65% of people choose where they want to live based on the community, outdoor recreation, proximity to parks and trails, arts and cultural amenities and activities, lively downtown, and other community amenities. We want our community to be the first choice. We really thank the city, the council, mayor for supporting these quality of place initiatives and investments in our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you, Big Sky Economic Development, for your contribution. Additional comments on anything under item 1 or item 2? Don't see any, so we will move ahead to the consent agenda. I'll ask for separations. We know that we have 2 items. I'll just separate them. Item 1D, the Community Transportation Plan, we've got some proposed amendments there. And item 1E, the North Bypass Study. So we'll come back to those items, but are there other separations? Any other separations? Okay, then do we have a motion for the non-separate items? Councilmember Gulick?
Yes, I'd move that to approve the items in the consent agenda as submitted with exception of items D and E.
Thank you very much. Is there a second? Councilmember Shaw. Is there any discussion on those items? Councilmember Neese and Councilmember Boyette and Purington.
Thank you, Mayor. Who can answer some questions about item G, what we just heard about the Mobilize the Magic City project?
Elise, looks like.
Thank you. Elise, after this is initially set up and goes on, first, I'm not quite sure if I understand what they're going to do about the placemaking, but just initially, let's say it's done. Is this going to be, is this going to go on for years and years, or is this going to stop, or is this now going to be expected to be funded by the city instead of BCETA after this? How's that going to work in long term?
Yes, thanks, Councilmember. So the grant that we received from the National Endowment for the Arts is only for 1 year. So we're going to contract with our artist in residence for 12 months. She's going to implement 2 creative placemaking hubs along our neighborhood bikeway, which goes basically from North Park to Rose Park. And then after that, this portion, I guess, of the project will be done. That's not to say that another group couldn't pick it up later or something like that, but we're not expecting the city to fund an artist in residence position indefinitely, if that's
Okay.
what your question is.
Mayor, I have another question
Go
about
ahead.
that. Can you describe what these placemaking things are like? Are we talking about painted sidewalks, streets? What is, help me understand how it's going to be placemaking where people are going to gather around a bikeway, if that's where it's going to be.
Yes, good question. So because creative placemaking is so focused on community input, we don't exactly know what the creative placemaking hubs are going to be yet. I can say we are very close to being able to introduce our artists to you, and we're very excited. And I think they bring a lot of talents, and we'll be able to create something really meaningful. But the idea is that this artist will engage the public and help the public figure out what they'd like to see. So it could be something like a painted intersection or a mini traffic circle, or a creative crosswalk or something like that. It could be something sculptural. We just kind of have to work through it with the public and see what it is that they want to see in their community.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Boyette?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to recognize we had 3 other donations besides the one for Big Sky Economic Development. The first was ExxonMobil for general support for the fire department for a total of $2,500. Also, Phillips 66, a donation of $8,500 to the fire department for emergency lighting and mobile response units. And then finally, the police and fire department were given $600 from the West High Volleyball and Coach Grossman. I think that's awesome. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much. Councilmember Purington.
Thank you. And that was where I was going with this, was to thank each of these entities and those volleyball people. I don't know if those are girls or boys. I suppose it's girls here, but anyway, thank you. My question is, Chris, I suppose you can answer this, is I know that the Phillips 66 donation was going to a specific thing as requested by the fire department, but these other donations that they get that are not targeted for any particular reason, do those go into a separate fund, like for equipment replacement? What do we do with those, Stu? Or they just go back into their general budget?
Councilmember Parrington, they don't just go into the general fund. We do
Not
keep
meant
them.
for each department. I
Yeah,
know
we
not.
keep them for the department and a donation fund for them to purchase something or be spent ideally on the direction that the donor is looking for. If they're not given direction, then they're saved up for other critical projects.
Well, I think that was my what I was wondering about is, could they not put them in something specific like equipment replacement or something? Do you want to keep it open?
Kevin, could you ever offer any history on what we've done here?
Yeah, normally what they do is they just go into a donation account, and some of these weren't earmarked, and before we did the staff memo, I did inquire, were they earmarked for anything, so we could tell council that, and they just weren't. So then they look for projects that fit into those, ranges, for the police and fire, the $600 a piece. When a project comes up, we don't have budget authority maybe to, to buy some piece of equipment or something, that's what we'll use it for, but it's set aside until those needs come up or arise for that.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on the non-separated items? Councilmember Tricky?
Yeah, a question about the electronic historic downtown walk-in tour. So I'm assuming it's at you, or? So is the plan, is the ThinkLink software, is that going to create like a standalone app that would be a Billings walking tour, or would it be part of like a larger menu of things?
Thank you, Councilmember Chiriki. What we are hoping to do is the Western Heritage Center, who is consultant to the Yellowstone Historic Preservation Board, already uses ThingLink for quite a few of their displays at the museum. And we're hoping to piggyback the mobile tour on with that. So it will be kind of an expansion, standalone on itself, but managed by Western Heritage Center, involved with their managing of that.
Do we have plans of putting around town like signage or something like that to tell people it's there?
We do have a plan in there for some funding to do some on-the-ground marketing, whether it be stickers or notices in certain businesses, the historic buildings downtown, so you can access it through either a QR code or a web-based application. So we are planning, we're going to design, what we did originally in 2011 is we designed business cards that had that QR code on it, and so the chamber had it, and different organizations, the hotels and stuff, so they could just pass them out, so you would be able to access it.
Thank you.
Councilor Tricky, if I may, I'll just also comment that although that project deals with historical resources, buildings downtown, I've had conversations with Kevin Koistra at the Western Heritage Center about developing a tour of historic homes. For example, west of the Moss Mansion neighborhood, in the Pioneer Park area, potentially along the rims, maybe along the river. So using this ThingLink methodology, and so stay tuned. That's all dependent upon funding, but we are woefully lacking in tour resources in Billings, and we have people who would love to be able to stay in our community for an extra half day, but we don't do a very good job of helping them to do that. So stay tuned. Hopefully this will expand beyond just downtown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anything else on the non-separated items before we go for the vote? Okay, we have a motion before us for approval of the non-separated items. If in favor of that motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. First separated item is item 1D, recommendation for approval of the Billings Community Transportation Plan to the PCC. We had a discussion at your work session last week about possible changes there. Staff, Friday, sent around to council an email with draft language with some changes. So I'm going to turn it over to our planning director, Wyatt Friday, to introduce this item and take us through those possible changes, and then I'll turn it back to council for either further discussion or a motion. Wyatt.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. And I guess a couple things real quick. So this is item D. Also, just to be clear, it's the Community Transportation Safety Plan. I think safety got left out as well on this one, but you're well aware of that from the presentation last Monday. I do have hopefully you were able to look at the email. We can pull up on the screen if need be, these items. But first, we had a lot of staff working on this, so I'm presenting it, but we coordinated quite a bit with Scott and Laura here from our transportation group, and then also with the consultants after our meeting, your meeting last week. So the first one, item D, there was discussion regarding the community safety plan and understanding better with the 4 E's that are addressed: the engineering, education, emergency medical services, and enforcement, and the conversation about engineering design specifically and kind of how that fits. And the idea that this plan is more specifically loaded and focused on the education, the emergency services, and the enforcement side. We have other both plans and processes for our designs, for our actual physical infrastructure. And so what we've proposed to you to address that was to add this paragraph to the executive summary to basically provide some clarification on why, what you're seeing, and that they're all important, and that the engineering was involved in this, absolutely, but the focus has been more on those non-specific or non-design elements. So that paragraph, I'm happy to. We got it on the email too. So great. So this is the paragraph that was provided to you this afternoon, and then the motion, if you wanted to include that into the executive summary for that purpose. And basically, the paragraph explains more about. Talks about the 4 E's and then also the emphasis area, and then also the other types of documents and processes that address the engineering and design aspects.
Wyatt, there's nobody on the face of the planet who'll be able to actually read that in the audience or probably online. So I'm going to just go ahead and read that 3 sentences or so that would be added, just so it's clear in the record. So the proposed new paragraph to be added in the executive summary would read as follows: to develop a comprehensive transportation safety plan, the 4 E's, engineering, education, emergency medical services, and enforcement, must be included in the effort. Professionals representing each of these areas were heavily involved in the data analysis, identification of focus areas, and ultimately the strategies outlined. The focus of the CTSP, the Community Transportation Safety Plan, is to review citizen behaviors, which result in strategies focused more heavily on education, emergency services, and enforcement. This plan's safety focus is to augment other planning efforts focused on the built environment, notably the Long-Range Transportation Plan and the Billings Area Bikeway and Trail Master Plan, completed by the Billings MPO and through capital planning by City and County Public Works. So, that's larger and greater. So, anyway, that's the proposed change. I'm going to kick it back to council. Are there questions or for Wyeth or motion or other comments? Councilmember Dees.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Billings Community Transportation Safety Plan to the policy, or get recommendation to the policy coordinating committee, and then we can make amendments to it later.
Very good. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Joy. Any further comments, Councilmember Dees, before we?
No, I think now that at least we have it on the table, now we can start making these amendments that we're looking at.
Any other discussion or changes or amendments? Councilmember Shaw.
Thank you. I'd like to make an amendment to add this paragraph to the executive summary.
Okay. And just to clarify, Councilmember Nice, yours was, was your motion only for the original, or did you intend to include this?
Just the original.
Just for the original, okay, thank you very much. So this is the amendment for the proposed addition of this language. Is there a second to that amendment? Second by Councilmember Joy. Discussion now on the amendment. Councilmember Nice. No, Councilmember Ripsis.
Why, just a quick question. The group's focus on just the education and emergency medical services enforcement sides of things, was that a decision that this group made, or was that mandated to us? Was it a subjective decision that we decided not to develop strategies that pulled everything together in one plan, or were our hands tied on that?
No, I'll have Laura answer that because this is our second update of the plan also, so there's.
Thank you, Councilmember Rupsis. Actually, this was not mandated. This was a decision by the steering committee of the plan update, which included all those stakeholders we discussed. After reviewing the data and looking at the individual crash data for those various emphasis areas, it was determined the best way to address those was through the, looking at behavior, education, emergency services, and enforcement.
Okay, just one.
Go ahead.
The long-range transportation plan that was just updated in 2018 or 2020, and the Billings Bike and Trail Master Plan, do either of those adopt as their primary goal the Vision Zero?
I can't remember specifically. I'm going through the transportation plan in my head right now. We have a whole chapter dedicated to safety. I don't know if I'm sure it references the state's commitment to Vision Zero, and our planning documents, when we do these, they are incorporated into those long-range plans. So it's similar to neighborhood plans. We have our growth policy. When we do a neighborhood plan, those are incorporated into our growth policy. These plans and studies, once they are adopted and incorporated into our long-range transportation plan. So like the Lockwood motorized plan or other plans are incorporated into our long-range transportation plan. So they're partner documents.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion on the proposed amendment of that paragraph or addition to that paragraph? Councilmember Purington.
Well, not so much, well, it kind of is, because it says the focus is to review citizens' behavior. So, and then it's focusing on the education, emergency medical services, and enforcement. So in the document as a whole, it relied heavily on the Montana Highway Patrol, the some legislative action, and then also law enforcement, local law enforcement, and their recommendation was to hire more officers. And so I guess that's where I'm going, and I have trouble with this plan because that's what we discussed last time. Well, it's just a plan. We don't have to adopt anything. But yet, you're saying, well, it's going to go into all these other plans. And when it comes before council, you'll say, well, you approved them. You approved the plan, so now you need to adopt them almost. So that's my understanding of how these plans go through. And so will there be an expectation of council, and I'm not saying it'd be this year, even next year, for them to hire more officers to take part of this, to be vocal proponents in maybe the next legislative session to have these seatbelt laws and some of these other laws that, you want in place, statewide cell phone bans and some of those other things. So I understand the education part, and I get that, but who advocates for these other things, to hire more officers, to have legislative action? Who advocates for that, and where does that come from?
Thank you, Councilmember Purington. How we view this and how we did our previous plan is these are already activities that most of the agencies are already undertaking. It's bringing all those efforts together in one plan. So for not this last legislative meeting, but maybe one or two before, there was a huge collaborative effort between the hospitals, emergency services, police, fire, to bring forward a primary seatbelt law at the legislature, and it failed in committee. So those are the types of things that are already out there being worked on. We obviously are advocating for some of those legislative and local activities to move forward, but we're not committing the city or the county to very specific commitments to those. What we're trying to do is bring all those agencies together more collaboratively and move forward with everybody's goals of improving safety.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Denise?
Thank you, Mayor. Wyeth, just if you wouldn't, just if you could tell me what this paragraph is giving the city, or with it being included versus not being included, what is this doing for this plan?
So Councilmember Neese and Mayor and Council, when, and I know you weren't at the meeting last week, the work session discussion, when the council was reviewing the plan, several council members, Councilmember Gulick, Councilmember Rupsis specifically, but there was further discussion. We're asking about clarifying in terms of when the engineering, education, emergency medical services, and enforcement, those 4 emphasis areas, there was discussion about the engineering component specifically and what level of inclusion and kind of recommendations came from that versus the other areas. And so Councilmember Gulick had proposed some clarification in the document to kind of address that in terms of the focus areas, what the emphasis was, and then also referencing the engineering side. So what we were following up on was trying to provide some language that could be included that would address that. So people could read this and understand why we weren't designing intersections in this safety plan. We were talking about focus more on the public's, the driving public and traveling public's behavior, and how do we influence that, and working with the same entities that Laura just mentioned, where they're already doing efforts, both outreach as well as enforcement, to address that. So that's what this is proposing to be added in. It's more of a clarification of
Okay, so if I can summarize what you just said, is the plan doesn't include engineering because engineering is already included in other city plans?
Correct. That's the, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gulick, Councilmember Gulick.
Yeah, I'm going to support this amendment as well as the the motion. I do feel like the language still isn't quite perfect in that it implies that behaviors are just those of the driver. Like if somebody's speeding, for instance, it's not necessarily just the driver, it's also the environment itself. So we have, when we look at the data, for instance, it's often not telling us the whole picture, I think. And so, like, for instance, people speeding on a street that has 15-foot wide lanes. That's very common versus someone speeding where they're deviant, basically speeding on through a neighborhood where there's just very narrow streets. Those are very different things that have different strategies to address them. And so that's where I'm looking for us as a community to be recognizing that we are designing our environment to be to support safer behaviors. But I will support the amendment. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the proposed amendment before we proceed to a vote on it? Councilmember Trichy?
I just want to emphasize the fact, and I sent this, Councilmember Rupsis actually sent me a study from the Federal Highway Department, I believe it was, and in it was a graphic that I think is really, really telling. If you look at that, the engineers sat down, they looked at it just like, looked at the data, and what they came up with is that out of, human factors, road, the environment, which is like weather, stuff like that, and vehicles, our engineers with vehicles and roads are doing a really good job. 2 out of 3 crashes that are happening in this study are happening because of what we would see in another venue, pilot error. It's the person behind the wheel.
Okay, council will proceed to a vote. This is just on the proposed amendment, the addition of this paragraph. If in favor of the proposed amendment, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Councilmember Purington voting in opposition, all other council members voting in favor. We now have before you the amended plan. Is there further discussion on that? And we have a motion on the table for approval. Councilmember Ripsis.
Yeah, just a quick statement. I don't want to really belabor this, but, you know, I am still concerned that this isn't a broader set of strategies. It's true that the long-range transportation plan and the bike and trail master plan both, you know, mention safety and have, you know, some small sections in there that are related to safety. But this is the only plan that we have that actually adopts Vision Zero and says our primary goal of this plan is to reduce traffic safety incidents. And so I think by not looking at things such as technology and engineering and even zoning and other things, we're selling ourselves short. By only looking at public education and enforcement type efforts, we're not going to get there. We can't just, you know, preach people out of being bad drivers. It's not going to happen. So I want to recognize all the work that went into this because I know it's a ton of work and it's a ton of different organizations and it's a lot of meetings and it's a big, long plan and everything in it is actually good, right? They're good strategies and they will be useful and they'll benefit our community. But I'm voting against it because it's incomplete. And I think we should tell the PCC, recommend to the PCC that it should go back for further refinement and include more things and include a broader set of strategies. And also that this Transportation Safety Oversight Committee should really be the focal point of looking at, you know, across all the different plans. This is the only essentially consolidated, comprehensive group that we might have. And we're hamstringing it by saying you can't pull in all the factors. Just look at these things that we're talking about in this particular plan. So again, I don't think that the plan and what it sets out is bad. I just think it's incomplete. And so I'm going to vote against it at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Shaw.
Thank you. I have a quick question for Director Friday. So I don't disagree. I mean, I think it would be nice to have one comprehensive plan, right? That would be much simpler and easier for us, I'm sure, to digest. But my question for you really is, what would it cost to do that? I mean, what are we looking at on top of, because it's staff time, it's, you know, that's money. And so I just have some ballpark in my head of what would that look like?
Councilmember Shaw and Mayor Council, it's a difficult question. I think we have, I think what I'm hearing and what we would be considering going forward is more looking at how, when we're doing the different types of transportation and safety planning across sort of the city, county, MPO structure, like how would you look at where things can be incorporated or combined versus somewhat separated in different plans. So I guess I would have a hard time. I mean, our transportation plan effort alone, and which, as Councilmember Ropes has said, and Laura had said too, I mean, includes, we have a whole, I mean, safety is all about that too. It's one of the elements in there. So to say, well, you know, a study like that or an effort like that, that's even quite a bit larger than this one, to sort of try to mush those together, I guess, is a tough thing to say, well, yeah, it would be about this much. I think we would have to look at how do we overlap those elements in different ways, and also how are we meshing with the state and the feds in terms of their expectations of how we compartmentalize and present these different items. I think that's part of the challenge too.
That's,
I don't know
yeah.
if Laura, you have anything to add, but that's, yeah. I don't have a number.
I think the only thing that I would add, Councilmember Shaw, is that we are just getting into our long-range transportation plan update. And that is a great opportunity to talk about some of these design elements that you are bringing up to incorporate into the safety plan, whether it be a discussion with engineering about how they design roads with lane widths and boulevards and intersections. That document is really a good place to look at that, incorporating that information. And I know when we get, you know, we're just really getting into that transportation plan. And I know that the consultant is planning this summer on trying to meet with stakeholders as yourselves to listen to those ideas and stuff. So that's another thing that we can look at incorporating.
Awesome. So this is really kind of the beginning of that process. And I think you guys, having heard comments, you know, but is that correct? Kind of my understanding of there's still a lot more work to do where we still have more time to try and incorporate all of this, but getting this passed and approved is an important first step. Is that?
This plan is separate but aligned with our transportation plan as far as the goals that we're trying to set out with our transportation planning that we do. The safety plan is really focused on those emphasis areas with collaboration with those different entities. The long-range transportation plan encompasses all of it. So it's really discussing, you can't really have a good discussion on design and stuff without bringing in engineering and their needs and what their desires are for the road transportation system. So it really would be a collaborative effort between multiple departments to discuss that. But it's just, the safety plan is kind of a standalone thing that's trying to meet those goals in that plan, but incorporating our long-range transportation plan together as well. But our long-range transportation is really our big kind of holy grail of what we do for transportation planning. It has all our projects in there. It has all the financials in there. It has safety, security, rail, and it's everything.
Awesome. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Trickey, and then council will move to a vote.
So I'm passing it out one more time, the initiative about the Traffic Safety Oversight Committee. I'm not going to ask us to vote on it today because of this issue that Councilmember Rupsis has brought up. And so I am going to try to include some language in it over the next week or so before we bring it to a vote to try to figure out how this oversight committee can at least address how we get to the issue, if not actually get to the issue.
Okay, thank you. Councilor, are we prepared to vote on item 1D? Okay, the motion is for approval of the amended plan with the addition of that paragraph. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay. Motion passes, but voting in opposition were council members Rupsis and Purinton. So motion passes 11, or tough math, 9-2. Thank you. The next item that was separated is item 1E, the Billings bypass study, scratch the north. And again, we had a couple staff recommended language changes that came out of the work session. Back to Wyeth, I believe there were 2 proposed changes to item 1E with the addition of not counting getting rid of north.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Correct. This is item 1E, Billings bypass corridor study. And this, again, after your discussion last Monday regarding when this was presented at the work session, there was some discussion and from staff and with the council regarding adding some clarifying language regarding future development being served by municipal services. And so what we have here, and this is on page 29, which is the section that talks about water and sanitary sewer recommendations in the document, is two little areas to change. One is in that second sentence in the blue, which is future development should be served by municipal services, basically just reaffirming and stating that right up front in that section. And then further down here, 3 paragraphs down, was to add a little bit more background on the what's existing out there. And so what we had proposed here is that, and I'll just read this because it's like 2 sentences, but the corridor development that is supported by the municipal water system will need to progress incrementally outward from existing system connection points unless a complete trunk water main is installed by the municipal service provider as part of programmed capital improvement projects. And that municipal service provider, we were trying to keep that broad. It originally said district, and we thought we should keep it broader because we don't know, who all might be involved in that effort. So that's where we put in that municipal service level. And then the new proposed language, or the addition piece, is the required pipe diameter of the water main extension will depend on the corridor development types and their water demands. The existing water main, which there is one in Mary Street, may have some capacity to supply some initial water demands along the system extension, but further analysis of the system is needed. And we talked a little bit about that also with you on last Monday regarding getting into more of the nuts and bolts of looking at the utility system out there moving forward from this to really see what would be required. But this is that language. So those are the proposed additions with a potential draft motion for that, and that would be to add that language into that page 29 of the document. Thanks.
Thank you. Questions for Wyeth or motions? Councilmember Dees.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Billings bypass study to the PCC as was written. We can talk about the amendments again later.
Okay. Second, Councilmember Purington. Okay. So we've got a motion to adopt the original. Further discussion, Councilmember Purington, Councilmember Shaw.
So I just have a quick question. Due to the water services to this, is the Heights Water District part of this discussion?
Councilmember Purington and Mayor and Council, they were just part of the analysis for this study and were talked to regarding their portion where they have water service out in the Heights area. So yes, they were consulted and talked to during this process, and they do have infrastructure in the area.
Councilmember Shaw and Councilmember Neese.
Thank you. I'd like to make an amendment to include the language proposed by planning staff as read by Director Friday.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Ripsis. Councilmember Shaw or Ripsis, you want to address your motion, or I'll turn it over to Councilmember Neese? Okay, Councilmember Neese.
Thank you. I'd like to make, can I make another amendment to this amendment that was just made?
I think you can amend an amendment once.
Thank you.
Right, Gina? Okay, so.
Can we get the language back up on screen, please? Okay, I'd like to make an amendment to change the municipality to public. Any place in there it says municipality to list it as a public service provider. And the reason being is Heights Water District is not a municipality. They're a water district, and so it'd be there, but they are a public service provider.
And so, Councilmember Neese, in that the first reference there, municipal service provider, you delete the word municipal and substitute the word public.
If there's a second.
If there's a second. Okay. Councilmember, and you're making the second? Okay. You've been so quiet all night. We're out of practice.
I can fix that, Mayor.
Okay, so that's a proposed amendment to the amendment. We'll proceed to further, is there any discussion on the proposed amendment to the amendment? Councilmember Purington, Councilmember Ripsis.
Well, I guess it's kind of a question. I don't disagree with you, but I think when Chris was bringing this up last week, he was hoping it would go to city services, to municipal services. That was my interpretation of what you were saying last week. So could you clarify your position?
Sure, Councilmember Purington, Mayor and Council. So I was clearly not very clear. My intent actually was to not exclude either Heights Water District or the city. So we were using the term municipal, not to imply that Heights Water District is a municipality, but we were using in the generic term. If we want to use public, I think it accomplishes the same thing. So the intent to answer your question was I was not trying to exclude Heights. We are the only service, we're the only sewer service. There are two potential water service providers.
As opposed to septic systems.
Okay, Councilmember Ripsis, I recognize you.
Yeah, Councilmember Neese, I just wanted to make sure, above this, if they scrolled up, there was one other sentence in blue. Future development should be served by municipal services. Your intent is to change it in both places.
Every municipality
not
should be
just this
struck and replaced with public. That's correct. Thank you for that. I didn't see the second one up there. I thought there was two changes. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. I assume that was consistent with Councilmember Owen's second.
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. Gina, do you see a difference between municipality and public? Do you see any good, bad, or indifferent ramifications from those two different words?
Mayor and Councilmember Boyette, I don't, off the top of my head, I don't see any issue with that, simply because there really is no other service provider besides the city of Billings and the county water district of Billings Heights. So, for example, if the county were to provide such services, then there may be a problem, but the county doesn't provide those types of services. So I don't see an issue.
Thank you, Councilor Tricky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council, in trying to wrap my head around this, a couple of different questions pop up. First, I'm sure municipal system shows up throughout the document, so it's not just in this one sentence. Another thing, so it may be wiser to define the phrase someplace in the document and saying what we actually mean by it if we want to do that. The other thing that I'm thinking about is to me, the main issue is that we want to make sure that whatever gets built out there is built to our standards. And by making that definition, by making that the defining reason for doing this, I'm not totally comfortable that an organization which has its roots in the county is necessarily going to build to our standards. But I mean, one way or another, I think I'm rather agnostic about it, but it raises a bunch of questions that I think I would have to have answered before I went forward with this. Thank you.
Okay, if staff can think about whether that's a critical phrase, municipal services, that's used elsewhere in the document. That was the first question there. Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you. Chris, could you visualize an area, a community that has city sewer, but water from somebody else? Is that realistic?
Yeah, everybody who lives inside the city limits in the Heights Water District has exactly that. They have city sewer and Heights Water. Heights Water is their delivery. We're still the ones who treat the water and create the clean drinking water. But yes, that does exist here in Billings as well as elsewhere.
And is that what we want to do in going forward, is to have multiple jurisdictions doing that, or not?
Maybe, maybe not. What's clear, I guess I would go to Councilmember Gulick's comment. What we don't want is wells and septics. That's not consistent with what the plan showed. So the idea is to have municipal or public to be on pipes, not on individual separate systems. That's what I was trying to accomplish by asking to ask you to consider the adjustment in this water section.
Wyatt, did you want to comment at all on Councilmember Chiriki's questions or concerns?
Well, Councilman or Mayor and Council, I guess part of the challenge of the municipal language in here is because of what Chris just said, which is the sewer is municipal up there. So I think what we can do is look at, it's public utilities. It's, that's the point of what we're trying to get to. So I think we understand that it may be that there are a couple areas, at least in this page, where it says municipal because there's also this sewer aspect being brought into it. So we can probably just look at that and address public utility services and make it more generic that way so that whether it's water or sewer, we're capturing city or heights. So I think that's what I would recommend, that we can do that, understanding what the intent is here. So it's consistent across all the references.
Okay, so there's the possibility there'd be additional changes beyond what we see here?
Well, I guess, Mayor, what I would say is Councilmember Nice's motion was amendment was to say public instead of municipal. Maybe if it was public utilities, if you just said that, we could then go and fix it all in all those places, and then, yeah, that would be the difference. So if you even just amended his motion to say public utilities, then we could cover water and sewer, and we'd be good.
Yeah, I have no trouble with having public utilities. That's, to me, it actually was to public services meant public utilities, but if we need to say it, I will include that if the second will agree.
Okay, so the phrase municipal services would come out and public utilities would go in.
In all locations.
Yeah, here and also elsewhere in the document if
there's other
necessary.
If there's other references to municipalities, that'd probably be appropriate because especially the corridor study is covered by that other area, the other entity. Thank you.
Correct, yeah. Yeah, and Mayor and Council, there are a few references on page 29, because this is an excerpt from it. You'll see under corridor development, it references it. So we'd want to just check those, yes.
Okay, Councilmember Owen, and we'll need your comment about your second on that because it's been changed a bit.
So fine. I think it's important to remember the goal of this entire conversation is to express a preference for the type of infrastructure that allows commercial and density type development. This is not about resolving sort of, parochial issues. This is a policy statement that is pro-development, that is pro-growth, that is pro-amenities in the Heights, that is, this is designed to encourage and engage the private sector in coming and making critical investments in a necessary part of the community. So I don't have any objection to the change, but I think whether, as staff are incorporating those changes, Mayor, as you're talking to the policy coordinating council, I think it's important that we remember that this is about a policy statement in favor of growth and development and density in this critical corridor and not about sort of wordsmithing.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it is to avoid private development, as Councilmember Gulick stressed earlier. Councilmember Tricky?
So is the Heights Water District required to build their water system to city standards?
Mayor and council,
I didn't think you knew.
Yeah, I know that they have to meet state, standards for their system. I don't know if, we have some folks in the audience who could be more specific, engineer
Would you like
folks.
Scott to comment, if council? That's okay. So Scott, if you, remember, we're not paying you for this, however, this advice.
I was just hoping to withdraw an application, but I will happily weigh in. The standards are very close to the same. They are not the same though. So there are differences in materials and valving, the intricacies of engineered stuff, but they're close.
So they get to set their own standard?
Yes.
Thank you.
Presumably within government requirements, yeah. You can't just willy-nilly.
Yeah.
Okay, council, are we ready to vote now on this amendment to the amendment? So this will substitute the word public utilities for municipal services in these two places, but also authorize staff to look elsewhere in the document to make those changes where staff deems necessary. Is the motion clear or clear enough? Okay, if in favor of that motion that motion for that amendment to the amendment, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Motion passes, exception of Councilmember Tricky voting in the opposition. We now have the changed amendment, which is to add that paragraph with those changes. Are we ready to vote on that? If in favor, so that is the motion. If in favor of the now amended amendment, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Brings us then to the, having created that amendment on the overall amended plan. Any further discussion on that? Okay, we do have that motion. Councilmember Owen?
Only a question for you, Mayor. When is the PCC meeting where this will potentially be adopted?
We meet on Tuesday, the 17th.
So next week?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, if in favor of the amended motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. That concludes item 1E and our consent agenda and brings us to item 2. Tony, would you read item 2?
Item 2, reconsideration of zone change 1019 located at lots 2 and 3, block 1, Zimmerman Home Place subdivision, third filing.
Wyeth.
All right. Good evening again, Mayor and Council. So just wanted to go through a few things here. I have some slides if we need them. I wasn't going to go to that right away based on kind of some of the things that are going on with the application. So I thought I'd walk through that a little bit first, and then City Attorney Dahl also has provided up on the screen here some language regarding option for the withdrawal motion. So basically, as you're aware and reading through our memo for this item, this zone change came to the council in November, on November 28th. And at that time, the council failed on a motion to approve the zone change. and so it didn't move to second reading. The council then came back on December 12th at your regular meeting as per your authority, and voted to plan to reconsider this item at a future meeting. Move forward then to today, and this is the meeting for that reconsideration. Backing up, on January 5th, you received a request from the applicant and the applicant's agent to withdraw this application. And so that is in front of you as well as an option this evening to consider, and that's the language that City Attorney Dahl has put up on the screen. And per the memo, there are several options here. Right now, with the reconsideration, you have the original motion to approve the zone change. That's still viable and available to you based on where you ended when the motion failed. And you would still be subject to the 2/3 majority because the valid protest is still out there, hasn't gone away. You also have the option to amend that motion in a variety of ways: denial, delay, and then allowing the applicant to withdraw, which is the formal request you have in front of you this evening that was submitted to you. And then the option regarding sending the matter back to the zoning commission, which we discussed at your previous meeting on the 12th as well. So I guess with that, I'm happy to answer questions, and also City Attorney Dahl can weigh in as well on the language she's provided. And then if you want to get into more of the background or revisit more of the zone change, we can do that as well. But I didn't want to spend that time if you want to first have your consideration with the withdrawal. So.
Okay, thank you. Since we do have a formal request to withdraw, I'm going to ask Gina just to describe her proposed motion, and then we'll have questions, and I'll recognize Councilmember Rupsis had his hand up. Gina, you just want to describe what you've got for us?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to clarify that while there is a recommended motion on your agenda, that motion is really already pending. That's what you're reconsidering. So while there's a motion there for you to make, it's really already made. It's on the table for your consideration, and that motion is to approve the zone change. And so if you all are inclined to allow the applicant to withdraw, then I've just provided some language there in bold for you to make a substitute motion to allow the withdrawal.
Okay, and the example that you have on your screen says, I move to substitute for the pending motion to approve zone change 1019, the following: that council approve the applicant's request to withdraw the application. Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. Councilmember, so discussion, questions, or motion. I recognize Councilmember Rupsis and Councilmember Nice.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to place a substitute motion to approve the applicant's request to withdraw the application.
Okay, second, Councilmember Tidswell. Did either of you want to discuss or address your motion before I recognize Councilmember Nice if he had anything further? No? Okay, Councilmember, did you have anything else, or you were doing that?
I would have, no, I just had a quick question about procedure. The email that we received, that's the request. The applicant doesn't have to come forward to request it during this proceeding. Is that correct?
It's my recollection of the code that they just have to make the request in writing and I think be available, but don't have to make an additional request here before you tonight.
Just want to make sure there wasn't something, since we were, that motion or the original item was before us, they had to do that during the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And just for the record, the applicant is with us and is not rushing to the podium to say he has changed his mind since he sent the formal written request. So we will operate on that assumption. Discussion now on the motion. Councilmember Treaky.
I just wanted to ask council to put on their thinking hats a little bit. The word that I heard was transition from in terms of height. And what I think our developers are going to need going forward is some way of putting that into code so that they can operationalize it. So let's be thinking about what we mean when we say that going forward. That said, I think what we have in place and the transition we have in place is fine. But if we're going to ask for something more stringent, let's be specific and figure out how to put it into the code. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion? Okay, we'll proceed to a vote. If not, again, the motion is substitute motion to allow the withdrawal of the application. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously, and I believe that concludes item number 2 for now. Thank you very much. That concludes our regular agenda, so we'll move on to public comment on non-agenda items. If anybody would like to comment on something that was not on our agenda tonight, the podium is all yours. You know the routine. We just ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes. Tell us your name and address up front.
Amber Dunn, Dorothy Lane. So I'm sure you guys saw my email. Once again, I will continue to send videos to show that we were not lying, our calls were not ambiguous, we were not telling false information. We gave you accurate information. Watching that video last Thursday hurt me internally. I couldn't go outside and say anything. I don't know these people. But I heard the little kid outside, so I started recording. I also want to let you know that I do have a contact in the DEA myself. I've been speaking to my contact since all of this started. And they sent me a message Friday that told me that he is running free until he is finally charged with the most recent issues, all the drug busts. When those charges are processed, whenever that would be, their words, the key thing to do with this guy is charge him as a repeat offender. So I guess my question is, why has that not already been done? We're like, 12 to 15 charges since '94. Why are we not already at that point? Why does someone have to suggest that for that to happen? Also, I wanted to take a moment and speak about the fact that I've been informed that you guys were all told by St. John that this is a mutual situation. So did I mutually ask for drug dealers to come and block my driveway so that we can't get out? No. Did I mutually ask for them to sit there and bump their radio in the morning when we actually sleep in and wake up all 4 of us? No. I don't mutually ask for these things to be done. This has never been a mutual situation. This has been a we have to defend what's going on right next to our house. We did not mutually want someone watching our daughter through a window. We did not mutually want drug dealers screaming at our house while our child was home alone. None of these issues are mutual, and I'm sick and tired of the lies being given to you guys. You also saw the email that was sent to you from the mother of the man that was shot in the road rage incident, yet nobody's responding to these emails. Billings PD is not helping her. No one seems to help. My husband read an email last week about these people not getting answers from Billings PD. So I'm just curious as to what it's going to take to get answers, because right now it feels like since the property was cleaned up, everything's just being brushed under the rug. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Garcia.
Jacqueline Garcia, Dorothy Lane. So last week, the judge was here, and the judge wants a pay increase. And so I've been doing some research myself on what the citizens think. They are elected officials. We should have a say. Not one person, and I've done a poll on one of the neighborhood watches on Facebook, not one person has said pay increase. We've had several say, leave it the same. And then there's also, are you kidding me? Have you seen the crime in Billings? And talking to some of these people in direct messages, they don't come to city council because they feel like nobody cares. They've given up. Mayor Cole in his 2021 re-election talked about the methamphetamine problem and it being a problem. But everyone feels like, not everyone, a lot of people feel like nothing is being done. Chris talked about having a town hall meeting. Can we get together and have a town hall meeting? Can there be one? And have it publicized to where people can actually come. You know, put on Facebook, put on mailers, something, because a lot of people feel like their voice is not heard. We come up here every week almost and talk about what's going on, and nothing's changed. We still have got a drug dealer 2 houses down from us. We've got so many problems on the bike trails. I can't even walk to Two Moons Park because there's people living in the bushes. I can't use those public trails. I don't feel safe. Even if I have my gun on me and my dog with me, I don't feel safe. How many other people in our community don't feel safe, and they don't feel like this is a safe place to come and talk? We need to make it more inviting. How can we do it? You guys all have my contact information. Let's set something up. Let's figure something out. Let's take our town back. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dunn.
Mr. Roy, don't start my minute yet, please. I got some paperwork. You don't mind? Everybody ready? Wesley Dunn, Dorothy Lane, Operation Clearinghouse at gmail.com, OP Clearing. So I want to give my courtesies first. So I've seen Derek Miller here in the audience here tonight. I want to nominate him for city administrator. He's doing a great job for the city. Another courtesy I want to give is Sergeant Stovall. That man right there, I know everybody's hearing about Sergeant Stovall. He's doing a great job. I nominate him for chief of police. There's my courtesies. Y'all probably saying, pound the sand, Wesley, pound sand, pound sand. That's all I'm hearing. That's all I'm saying, basically, pound sand. When I get done pounding sand, it's going to be a beautiful piece of art. One weekend of 2023, and it's already getting hot in here. I'm going to keep my leather jacket on so I don't get burned. How's everybody enjoying the show? Because that's basically what this is. This is a show. Everything's being swept under the rug, Mr. Mayor. No questions are being answered. Everything is being swept under the rug. This is nothing but a show to y'all. Nothing but a show. So those signatures you got right there, I'm going to start on that. Jennifer, in no way is this towards you in a bad way. You are doing a great job. Mr. Roy next to you, you're doing a great job. There's some others on this council that are also doing a good job. But those signatures right there are from Dorothy Lane. I had an issue Sunday morning with a druggie sitting outside my house, and I felt like, do I scream and holler and get another meeting that Miss Jennifer set up and get this all going again? I said, no, I'm going to go the opposite direction. I'm going to start going and knocking on doors. And that's what I did. So, Jennifer, I did your job for you. Roy, I'm coming to your neighborhood next, starting with St. John. And I'll go so on and so on and so on and keep asking this question. So the question is, guys, do you think methamphetamines, child endangerment, sex trafficking, and/or prostitution should be decriminalized in the city of Billings? I asked every one of these people that you see on that list. 100% of them said no. 10% of them said they didn't want to sign the paper. 90% of them signed that. There's 34 signatures right there just off of Dorothy Lane. Okay? So I'll remind you, Anthony William Felton, Robert Andrew Morris. Do you think methamphetamines, child endangerment, sex trafficking, and/or prostitution should be decriminalized? Talk to your judges. Look at your judges. It's already decriminalized. Your judges are decriminalizing it. Nobody agrees with it, but they're doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on an item not on our agenda?
That looks like more than a 3-minute speech.
Yeah.
I'm not going to read it all, I promise. Thank you. Hello, Mayor, Council. I'm Wendy Stiff. My address is 4507 Bowman Drive. I'm a real estate lender. I'm here today to talk about an upcoming agenda item, Special Review 995 with 7 variances, AKA the Blue Creek Car Wash. I think it's safe to say that our neighborhood opposition is on record. There are some folks who don't want to see any change or growth at all. Many of us are simply asking for growth in a responsible manner. At the September 26th council meeting, the majority of us agreed that this project did not meet the 10 criteria for a zone change. It appears there will be a similar list of criteria on January 23rd, and there have been some changes in the proposed building plan, as you will see. But this concept of a 6-bay car wash at the entrance of Cedar Park subdivision is still the same. The entrance and exit is still on Santiago Boulevard. I would ask that you all consider, is this project truly consistent with the growth policy? Or are certain guidelines being cherry-picked to align with the builder's plan? Now, I don't have the resources of our planning department or of performance engineering, the builder's agent, but we do have some wonderful tools online. So that's why I asked those maps to be passed out. It's a bird's eye view of what I'm describing. In the green circle is our subject area. The dark red is the existing large storage unit facility. The little island subdivision on the right is Cedar Park, and the subdivision on the left is Quanta. Our hope is that even with growth, we can avoid this bunching up of commercial development at our neighborhood entrances. What is the true impact of cramming in commercial developments at a gateway to not only our neighborhood, but also at the southern entrance of our city? We do understand that there's a value for infill and the need for attracting businesses to our communities. But my family has seen firsthand the haphazard, chaotic growth in the oil field. It drove us and many families out of the Williston area, and we just don't want to see that happen in Billings. We look forward to working towards strong neighborhoods, prosperity, and a community fabric. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment on items not on our agenda? No one's coming forward, so we'll close that. Any council initiatives this evening? Don't see any. So, council, we're adjourned. Thank you.